Hi there, it's Polly here, in 40 degrees heat in Australia, thus explaining the margarita. So there's been quite a few cool joys at the start of the year for us, and one of these has been a re-release of the first edition of my favourite science fiction miniatures game. So, Stargard. Now, I have done a review of Stargard in general. Let's review this. What they've done is, it's the 50th anniversary of Stargard. 50. And I played this edition. So what they've done is they have, to celebrate this, reprinted the first edition of the rules. And this is an amazingly viable game. Now, I have the current edition of the games and I've reviewed it. The one that I played most as a kid was 3rd edition, and I love 3rd edition, but I now realise 3rd edition was really only viable because I was playing with players who'd played this. Now, this game is brilliant. It really is. Fantastic bones. It plays well. It's a solid game, and that's why Starguard is the game that will not die. It is still played 50 years later. Enthusiastic communities worldwide play it, and you should too. The miniatures are still being put out, and I will put links to those down below. So John McEwen, who wrote these, he was running McEwen's Miniatures for many years, and that still runs. He's kind of retiring back a bit now, and his son is running it, but also the miniatures are produced by R&B Miniatures, who are a fantastic company, and they do tons of old school science fiction miniatures, and they paint up so well. They've just sent me a whole box of them. This is my painting project for the moment, because they do cool kind of arachnid bugs, and they do cool kind of earwicky worms, and they do snakes, and they do all kind of, kangaroo warriors and guys in powered armor, and it's kind of a joy seeing the old school style miniature sculpts, because modern science fiction ones are massively over sculptured. They're too chunky. They're not human style proportions at all. They're too overposed. They're too blocky, and it's an art style in itself. And then you look at these ones, which came from traditional model soldier sculpting, and they're proportioned, they're sort of slim. There's usually minimal poses, but the poses are ones that human beings actually strike. They're wearing gear that is sensible, and it kind of has that kind of 60s, 70s kind of future sensibility about some of the uniform designs. But I love it. So anyway, Starguard. So Starguard runs off what back then was a kind of a D6 system. It's actually a D12 system. To roll to hit, these days you would be rolling a D12. What they were saying then was roll 2D6 of different colours, say red and white. If the red rolls a 4, 5 and 6, add 6 to what the white dice has. So you're generating a number between 1 and 12 to hit. All the weapons have stat charts which basically show you the number needed to hit at different ranges, number between 1 and 12. And there's quite an array of weapons. So what these rules did was, it is, God, what is it, the 23rd century? 2250, okay. So there is the Starguard. They're kind of the elite troops of the whole kind of Terran Federation sort of thing. And so you've got unit organizations for Starguard. So it shows you how to do platoons and companies of these guys. These guys are soldiers with laser rifles and sonic grenades and so on. They've got body armor protection, and they've got sort of protective visors to protect them against kind of flash from nuclear explosions, which occur on the tabletop in this thing, because you guys are flinging nukes at each other. And jetpacks for flying around. The infantry often wear jetpacks in this thing. And they also have like a heavy assault platoon who are wearing powered armor, and heavy weapons platoons with portable missile launchers and all this sort of stuff, and special weapons squads who can carry like captured enemy weapons, because some enemy weapons are cool, but they can also carry things like slaver disintegrators, from good old Larry Niven and so on, that can dig tunnels and plow holes through walls, and anyone caught in the path of one might be very unhappy. Short range, but boom. So they've got those. These rules have other races there as well. My personal favourite alien race is the Drenoi, which are humanoid, ant-like insectoids. They are a hive mind, and they've got some cool technologies. They do have jetpacks. They're not as efficient as the human ones, but it's still a jetpack, so it's not as fast. They are a hive mind and they're telepathic, so you don't need your guys don't need radios. They've got really, really tough chitin, so they actually don't wear body armor. They don't really need it. It's pretty good protection against most weapons. It's very good protection in hand-to-hand, and you don't need to buy them hand-to-hand weapons because they've got claws and mandibles, and these things are absolutely ruthless in hand-to-hand. They're very good at pulling people to pieces. There are the Ralnai, who are kind of a noble race of lizard people. They've kind of a knightly class who often ride grab sleds with built-in disruptor rifles and so on, and they've got force swords and so on. So they're kind of like a rapid movement dagger from above group, but we'll jump down and fight you sword to sword. And they've got infantry groups and so forth. They've got also in these rules they've got the Amarons, which are a low tech human group who are just wearing kind of like a ablative vest, so it's a little bit of protection against lasers, but not against other things. They're using a cone rifle rather than an energy weapon, so they're using basically a kind of a beefed up Garajet rifle, and they even have guys on horseback. They're fairly low tech because the idea is they're some sort of colonists. Then you're not given a lot of background in this. You were just given these forces. More on those later. Weapons, they're split in things like lasers. So lasers, they're built-in auto-fire, so you can just fire them, and there's an auto-fire template. So basically, if you're going auto-fire, you can put a template down, and you can roll to hit anything in the template. And you can actually hit, if you fire auto-fire just at one person, then you can actually hit multiple times on them. So do you want to spray it around, or do you want to concentrate it? If there are firing auto fire and there's something like swamp or water or streams under the template, then some of the shots are striking water, so you get steam produced, so you get basically a smoke effect appears there. There are some dense smokes can block lasers or diminish their effects, so you have to be very careful. There are disruptors, and the disruptors basically cause molecules to come out of phase and explode. And the Drenoi, they use disruptors. The Ralnai, they use disruptors as well. They are pretty brutal, actually. They're not quite as long ranged as the lasers, but they actually do a lot more they're easier to hit with that close range. And if disruptors are firing into areas that are like trees and so on, they can cause tree trunks to explode. So they can go off like a hand grenade. There's a random chance, like 50-50 chance that trees in the air will explode. So I think you start to have to be a bit choosy about what kind of terrain you're hiding in. There are missile launchers that can fling all sorts of different warheads, including nukes, which have a pretty big blast radius and a big automatic kill zone in them. Like many other games, if you miss with a portable missile launcher or whatever, then you roll to see where the actual hit drifted. So it can, drift around a bit. You might still catch what you were firing at in part of the blast zone. There are mortars and all this sort of thing. There are grenade throwers, grenade launchers. There are disposable ones, which kind of fit under, a one-shot launcher that can fit under some rifles. There are dedicated ones, and they can fire like smoke rounds and all these sorts of things. Illumination rounds. They can also fire sonic grenades, which are pretty efficient, actually. They're good fun. But you get the cone rifles that the Amarons use, and again, it's kind of not, because it's a physical thing, it's not quite as accurate as the lasers, but it's got some interesting effects, because if when you fire at somebody under these rules, if you hit them and don't penetrate their armor, or if you come within I think it's 1 or 2 points of hitting them, then the target is pinned. So they have to go to ground or go to the nearest cover, and they lose their next combat turn because they've gone to ground. But the cone rifles, they have a bigger range for that, because their idea is there's this considerable shockwave from these things going past, and they've got a bit of a proximity fuse on them, so they're actually kind of exploding if they think they've missed. So there's a shock wave, so you can actually stun people for like, I think it's a D3 turns if you get a very near miss. So not as accurate and not as good at an outright kill, but absolute sows chaos by kind of knocking characters down and putting them out with shock for a while. So some interesting stuff going on here as far as small arms and weapons and so on go. Now, these rules are very, very clear about their turn sequence and so on. So it's a I go, you go system. So 2 sides, or however many sides, but say 2 sides. When it's your turn, you can move characters. You can shoot. Anyone that was... you can have someone set so that they are doing covering fire. Now, if you haven't moved, you can do covering fire. And the other guy will do covering fire when you move. So, starts off your movement. If the other guy has got covering fire allowed, he can do fire at any of your guys that are moving. Once you've moved, you get to do fire. And you can fire from anything that's moved. They do get a penalty to hit if they've moved. And you can also fire from anything that's stationary. Okay, so it's kind of important. And again, these are clearly done by kind of essentially good old-fashioned 1970s people who've served. So you can see immediately you're going to want to move your guys in bounds, covering each other. And some guys stationary and firing because they get good bonuses to hit. Other ones moving rapidly forward into cover where they're going to settle down, do covering fire for the next lot to bound. So you're going to have to think about what you're doing. Once you've done all that, other guy gets to move, he moves. Your guys that are set for covering fire, they can, if they haven't moved, they can shoot, etc. So you can shoot twice if you haven't moved. You can shoot once during covering fire and once during like your normal firebound. So you can do lots of other little minor actions for free. You can communicate and you can look. They've got simple little sensor rules. So some officers carry sensors so they can scan for hidden troops and this sort of stuff. They say that there are, if you've got hidden troops due to the scenario and all this sort of stuff, they can crawl and stay hidden and all this sort of thing. But if anyone fires weapons, they reveal themselves. Unless they're firing, there's a weapon called the needle rifle, which uses a force beam to kind of propel a needle, which is either poisonous or explosive tipped. And it's not very good at penetrating. It's not going it's going subsonic, so it doesn't give itself away. But on the other hand, it doesn't reveal itself when it fires. You've got to specifically search, or reconnaissance by fire is a thing in this because you've got that autofire template. It's like, right, I bet he's on the leading edge of those woods. Let's just lay some autofire down on those woods. And there is a thing there. You've got a chance of really of hitting him. Not as good as if you could see him, obviously, but you can brass up the foliage. So, simple, well done, a huge variety of different weapons, 4 different races in there to play, each of which is very, very different, each of which has its own flavour. They've got simple rules in there for vehicles, and they work. You can meddle with those to make any kind of armoured vehicles that you want. They've got support weapons and so on in there. So if you want to make tanks or armoured cars or armoured robots or construction bots that are just going to be used to try and fight or whatever, it's in there. In many, many ways, you can see the perfect set of science fiction skirmish rules. Now, what's missing compared to the later ones? Well, these are our pages of the races. There's not a lot of information about them here. It's really just their organisation and really a couple of short paragraphs about, these guys are lizards and, they do this and, oh God, here's what the uniform looks like if you want to paint them up. The later editions of this, 3rd edition, which I was particularly used to, that spends a few pages to go over each of these, and it gives you the backstory and it gives you some history about what they are. So that's what's missing. And so, like, the Ralnai, who are the lizard guy said, explains that they took some pretty heavy casualties in some early wars. So they actually don't like to take physical casualties, which is at odds with this heroic ethos they've got of kind of the samurai-like thing of proving themselves in battle. So they thicken out their forces with robots and non-sentient creatures that are actually piloted like drones. If there's something costly like an assault or something, they'll do it with this stuff rather than their infantry, who will then usually follow up, or they'll be the wings, or they'll be the things that require the smart tactical nous, or they'll strike in to do the mighty kind of telling blow and gain the glory. But okay, so there's some more role-playing things. It explains that those Amarons are actually kind of almost like an Amish group of settlers, and that's why they are so low tech, but also that's why they're kind of so ferocious, because remember, these are written kind of Yom Kippur War kind of period, so the author's kind of enthused about some religious-y guys kind of holding off the incoming hordes. And in this case, they've been attacked by this horrible free enterprise kind of republic that's been trying to basically, rip them off and steal their stuff. So these guys are gone from isolationists to and also act as mercenaries and so on. Third edition brought in more races. So what third edition brought in were the Eloi, who were now get this, a very high-tech, almost elf-like humanoid species who wander through the universe in giant city ships, which have technologies somewhat beyond ours, but they're very ancient, and in some cases they've forgotten how these technologies work and have kind of ritualized them into a religion. Does any of this sound like it was anyway plagiarized by other science fiction rules you might be aware of? Remembering that these rules came out long before certain things involving Warhammers. So, Eloi are great. They use a kind of plasma rifle. It fires kind of an expanding cone. So, narrow effect, but quite concentrated at close range. Dissipates a bit at long range, but, has a broader area of effect. So, again, more cool stuff to deal with. And it also brought in Repcom, Republic of Commerce, who are these kind of free enterprise assholes out there to kind of wheel and deal and colonize and be neoliberal at everybody. And also run around as mercenaries, etc. And then there was a supplement called Orilla for third edition, which brought out yet more races. So, so as this thing went on, it brought out more things. But here's the interesting thing I found. We were playing third ed, and we were essentially playing those turn rules from the first. Third edition, when I reread them very carefully, it's actually a bit dithery on the actual mechanics of the rules. It's like the author got excited about putting background in, but was vague about the rules. So if you've played first edition, you know what they're talking about. Okay, we get to move. Anything that hasn't moved can do covering fire. Everything can either, you get two actions. Essentially, you can move and fire and da-da-da-da-da. Third edition puts in a way more complex ordering system, which I think is unnecessary. Where you have to write down different codes for each individual figure of what it's going to do that turn, etc. But it's still kind of unclear about that whole kind of who takes a turn when. Am I moving one figure and then he's moving one and we keep going? Or is it my side moves? It never clarifies those very important moments, which first edition did. So yeah, interesting omission there, I have to say. And again, if you were just an enthusiastic player, you'd have bought third edition simply because it gives you more background and more cool stuff. Third edition background on the Drenoid, by the way, was kind of hilarious because the Drenoid, they're sweet. It's kind of what I like. They're kind of the dread insect menace that are here to consume us all, but they're kind of sweet because they're sort of innocent and they're just running around being bugs and colonizing stuff left, right, and center. But then it says they found a Amaron copy of the Bible, and this thing that says that there's a being that can be everywhere at once and is kind of all knowing. They just like, wait, that's me. So it's kind of got a vague idea that maybe it kind of created a lot of this stuff and forgot, etc. So So as I said in my previous review of Stargard, there are tons of cool resources out for this. There's paper buildings and there's a whole society, there's Facebook pages and so on. But this is worth getting hold of. Go onto the R&B site, get hold of a copy. Now, at the moment, I've got copies that are actually signed by McEwen, which indeed I have, which is great, just for old time's sake. They do have those there. It's a limited run on these, so if you want them, go and get them now. The current version of the rules is, of course, up there on the site for sale. Now, as I said in my previous review, the current one, I believe it's now a D20 system, not the D12. And my problem with the new system is that it's full of all the enthusiastic ideas that they've had over 50 years of play. So it's a really thick book. And that thick book is full of bits of short story and tons of background on the races and tons of cool robots and cool vehicles that guys have designed over 50 years of play. And here's some extra rules we came up with for playing on jungle planets. And here's our chart we came up with for if you wanted to do carnivorous plants hiding in the jungle. And every single bit of it's useful, but it's a big, big kind of chaotic read. And the actual bones of the rules are pretty much the same. It's just that they have switched to percentile dice for a lot of things as well, and there are some charts and tables, and so it's a slightly more bookkeepy game than this very simple end where I have this D12 roll to see if I hit. If I hit, I have to roll to see if I go through my target's armor. If I don't go through his armor, or if I've missed him by 1 or 2 points, he's pinned and doesn't get a turn during his next turn. Very simple and very effective. Very, very simple, effective rules. You have the time of your life with it. There are different tactical bonuses and problems depending on what sort of weapons you're using and so on. First edition, incredibly playable. If you can ever find the third edition, or indeed get the modern one, it's worth it for the cool backgrounds on the races and so on. And it brings in some more stuff into the organization. So it's like in the first edition, for some reason, the Ralnai don't have grenade launchers attached to support weapons and so on to their squads. And the later ones like, oh, no. What we meant, they got like 4 riflemen and a grenade launcher. Sort of, sorry, we left that out. So, little details like that. But, and I must also say these are fantastic introductory rules if you're trying to get kids involved in gaming and then new gamers and so on, because clear, concise, you can learn it very, very quickly. There's no rules lawyership involved because the rules are just so damn robust and simple. The thing will get you playing, and that old school kind of Geist is going to come out. You can make terrain from, you can make alien jungles from plastic aquarium plants, strange seed pods that you find out, from the trees on the lawn, weird paper mache stuff, cool buildings. I actually have a whole bunch of Crusher Joe 172nd fighters and fighter planes, and also from Captain Harlock. There's a really good kind of Focke-Wulf 190 inspired fighter and so on, but I can set up like a whole landing strip where there's fighters in fighter bays, and there's a couple of radar dishes and so on, and so it kind of inspires you to make cool terrain to play this. And the figures, of course, are inexpensive as hell. They really are compared to modern overpost stuff. These are great affordable troops, and you're not going to be expected to buy that many. If you want the cheapest troops to field are going to be something like the bugs. If you want a mighty bug horde, they're still only about, maybe you got 30 miniatures on the table. And we're not talking that much per miniature. So, hey, you're getting a cool army on the field for $60, Mazel tov, guys. Anyway, these are, I'm just spectacularly happy to have these back, particularly the first edition, because it's a nice look at where it came from. And I really was surprised at how this had covered everything. Like the later version that I was playing. Really only just had some extra detail. That was all they'd gone on to fill out. So a really good game. Great to see it back. Go on the site and get a copy. Hell, tell them I sent you. Anyway, hope I meet you guys around the gaming table someday. Keep rolling the dice. Look after yourselves, everybody. Cheers. Bye.